All right, guys, welcome in here on a Monday fun day. It is January the 27th as we look to make heads or tails here of a crazy weekend in college hoops. He is Ralph Michaels and, of course, WagerTalk.com. Very light card here tonight, guys. A couple of games in here that we'll go over, featured games, but wild weekend, of course, in college hoops, Ralph, and it's just one of those it's just one of those years right now. Left is right, right is left, up is down. It's you got to love college basketball with no really great teams in it.
Yeah, when your best teams in the country, probably Kansas and Duke, have 3 losses. Baylor, Gonzaga in the mix, obviously. But, take a look. Not that a 1-point dog is an upset, but there were, on Saturday, when we showed the upset, there were 29 upsets of dogs or 2.5 or more.
Yep.
And there were 44 dogs that won outright, be it a dog of 1 point or more, but 44 dogs won on Saturday. So it just shows you that perhaps college basketball has achieved what the NFL was looking for, parity.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. And we kept hearing about one and dones and all of this crap and everything else. And oh no, well, the rich ain't getting richer, Ralph. It just seems that the wealth is being spread around a little bit more evenly because it really was. And I mean, look at Cal. Who is Cal beating here in this year? Cal's one of the worst teams in the Pac-12, and then all of a sudden, boom. Thanks very much, Stanford, for showing up. Like, you got to be kidding me.
Well, again, at least with Cal, I have an explanation. Remember, they beat the Washingtons last week at home, and they have Mark Fox in his first year. So, I think Cal is a team where at least I can understand they're getting better with a good coach who's getting the team to play up to a level that they haven't in the past. So, it's the teams with the multi-year coaches that you can't understand why they're playing so bad.
Yeah. And Maryland with a ridiculous come-from-behind win. They were a dog in that in Indiana. Indiana had only lost 1 game going into that, Ralph, at home. And voila, when you know it, they had a really great first half, and then Maryland just chipped away in the second half and was able to pull out.
Yeah, Maryland is the better team, but with the Big Ten, I don't know how much are we adding for home road dichotomies, as bad as some are playing. And, while we talked about all those upsets on Saturday, you see that the biggest upsets were, there were only 2 double-digit upsets. So It wasn't a huge card of the big dogs, but it's all these teams grouped in the middle playing their 3rd or 4th conference road games that, you're playing well. I mean, Wilmington was a team we joked about that lost to Cleveland State earlier this year. So, all of a sudden they come and pull a 13-point road upset.
Yeah, and some of these covers here, Ralph, were just crazy. Boise State and Fresno covering by 34. App State, Coastal Carolina, 26.5. USC, Oregon State was another one, 23.5. You start seeing these numbers and you're going, wow, these were blowout specials in the making.
Yeah, well, I mean, the one, if you look down to Sunday, that stands out to me is, Evansville covered by 10.5. They still lost the game.
Yep.
But that's that Evansville team that has lost 8 straight and looked like they were going to lose every game by 30 or more, with the firing of McCarthy now and the interim in. So, at some point they're going to turn it around a little bit, like we saw North Carolina, last week get a win. That when you're that bad, the line gets adjusted to you, teams start looking past you, and if you have a decent game, you can pull the upset or make the top of the ATS covers by even losing by 2.
Yeah. The Michigan State, of course, Minnesota, another one too, 15 points there. Michigan State, were they going to be able to win on the road? Minnesota's been good at home, but they weren't very good there against Michigan State there, Ralph, as they covered by 15.
Yeah, you ask 10 people at a bar, Joe, at the beginning of the basketball season, that this is the score. Is it an upset? They'd probably 9 out of 10 would say no.
Right.
So now all of a sudden Minnesota plays better. Michigan State struggles on the road, and all of a sudden it's an upset. So, I mean, Michigan State, probably would have been a 7-8 point road favorite to start the beginning of the year, start the Big Ten season.
Yep, absolutely crazy. And some of the names that we continue to see across the board, Ralph, some of the big performers. Some of these schools, although Akron over the weekend, Lauren Jackson, how about that? 35, 2-5-2 for him against Ohio there, and in the win, and Akron taking care of business. North Carolina Century, Jabiri Blount, we've talked about him before, but, it's the Chris Duartes of the world that here they go again, and Jalen Smith, here we go again.
Yeah, Blunt's been on here 3 or 4 times, and, he's a kid I know because he went to Cleveland State and he transferred. So, I keep thinking, my God, what would have happened if he would have stayed? But, you also have to take things in perspective. Shamarcus Kennedy scored 37. Well, look who they played. We joke about Houston Baptist and they give up 100 points to everyone. So, if your team is scoring a third of your baskets, if you're playing a Virginia team, that translates to like 14 points. So, it also is who you're playing and the pace. I was on Akron. They had a 20-point lead at halftime, and they ended up winning and not covering. That was a disappointing loss for me on Saturday, as I think sometimes teams jump out to that big lead at halftime and they just don't come out with that same intensity, and you can never get it back. I would much rather have a team be down at the 10-minute mark and make a little run to get close and then carry that momentum into the second half than have a team that was up by 20 coming out in the second half. So Duarte, I mean, another game I was on the wrong side of. UCLA's playing better, and I thought they might be able to keep it close. But just watching Duarte play, UCLA tries a little cross pass, and Duarte steals it and goes in for a layup. So 6 rebounds, 6 steals. Certainly a performance for him.
Yeah, and we got to stop sleeping on Tulsa, people. How many more times do we got to see them win both at home and on the road, and win as underdogs, Ralph, before we start realizing that this is you've been talking about them all year long as a team that was very undervalued.
Yeah, again, they have one of the strongest home courts. It's a game I left off. Now, it was an overtime win, so the game itself could have gone either way, but still a good win going to face a UConn team that doesn't have much offense, and it ended up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. San Diego State it is. And, guys, of course, I want to invite you to head over to WagerTalk.com, as always, as it's going to be another big week here. Small card tonight. Some interesting games across the board here. We'll cover a couple of them for you. And, I mean, I don't think it would be we'd be remiss, Ralph, if we didn't mention we get to break down Mississippi Valley State tonight against Prairie View. But before we get to that, let's talk here a little bit about a trend or an angle or two that is on the board here, Ralph.
Yeah, I pulling it up and looking at the top trends. North Carolina AT&T is in that New Orleans and Houston Baptist range now, where they've had 11 straight over-unders going back. And Bethune-Cookman, again, another one of those MEAC teams, 11-1 over-under. Northern Colorado on the road, 3-15 over-under. Eastern Washington, a team that I thought might challenge for the Big Sky. They have now failed to cover 7 straight games. NC State 0-7 over under at home. They, of course, have their rival. And, let me find one that's, Oklahoma State. We're going to talk about them in a minute, Joe. They're now 1-7 ATS at home. They're coming off that big win at A&M where, it showed that the Big 12 is stronger than the SEC.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, and listen, I mean, going into some of these matchups here today, Ralph. I mean, those are the two big. You do have North Carolina, NC State on the board, as NC State at home sees themselves as a 5.5-point favorite. Total going up, creeping up a little bit from 147 to 148. North Carolina got their whoop on the University of Miami there over the weekend, feeling good about himself. Is it enough? I don't know, to go into NC State, who has struggled a little bit. Had a barn burner there against Georgia Tech that they ended up on the losing side of. But they're back home, Ralph. So this is another one of those games where, who do you trust? Do you believe your eyes, or do you believe maybe North Carolina and Roy Williams found the combination that works?
Yeah, I think the line is where I should be. I mean, they were livid. NC State was livid with that loss. But, we've also seen North Carolina, listen, it's not as if though they have 1- and 2-star recruits playing behind those guys. And, you give them practice time and you give them court time, and they're going to improve as well.
Yep. Yeah. And of course, the two big games on the card here tonight, you mentioned one of them, Kansas, Oklahoma State here, Ralph, and this is a game that opened up with Kansas as a really big favorite in Stillwater. There opened up at 9, but that didn't last long. It's down to 7. The total keeps creeping up, 132.5. I'm seeing 136 now across the board. Kansas going to be lacking on depth here. We know with the suspensions and whatnot, they are going to be a little bit thin. It wasn't a problem against Kansas State. Will it be a problem to cover a 7-point favorite on the road against Oklahoma State, in your opinion?
Well, this is just a system I'm going to share, and obviously the line is where it is because of the suspensions. Mm-hmm. But again, just like we've talked about, they have other kids behind them, and they have depth. Going all the way back to 2016, it's been about 700 games now, Joe. When you have a top 10 team against an unranked team, either as a dog or laying up to 11 points.
Okay.
So you just have the better team, obviously, a ranked top 10 team, either as a dog or a favorite of up to 11. Again, since 2016, it's hit 60.5%. So, again, it's not going to say, wow, it's an 80% angle, but when you have an elite team like that in that situation where it's a very winnable game, they've covered 60.5%. Again, going back to 2016.
Right. So, all right. So it's an interesting game there tonight, guys. It just depends on how much do you trust Oklahoma State to provide enough offense. They have played Kansas tough, over the last couple of years there. So do you trust them enough to put enough offense on there to keep this game within the 7 points, and maybe a little less defense on Kansas with all the suspensions, so maybe a little bit easier time for them? It's a tough game. But then again, so is Iowa traveling there to take on Wisconsin, which is another one of these games, Ralph, where Iowa's 14-5. They're 5-3 in the Big Ten. They're a game and a half behind Illinois and Michigan State, but they've won 4 games in a row. They're 4-0 in conference home games. They've got an average margin of victory of 15 points or more. I mean, nobody's playing better than Iowa right now. They're also 12-5-2 against the spread, including a 5-0-1 number in the last 6 at Carver Hawkeye Arena. What in the hell do you do with this game, Ralph? It's 5.5 Iowa. It's staying at 5.5. There's a lot of money coming both ways. It's a tough game to look at. 137 for a total.
It is. Let me remind one thing that I forgot to mention with the Kansas game, Joe.
Yes.
Bill Self is an alum, so
yeah.
he remembers playing Oklahoma State, and he doesn't like losing to them. I mean,
yes.
He was an assistant there, and he knows. So
yeah,
anytime you're an alum playing, that's something you think about. That
yep.
Do you really want to fade him in that role? But elite offense for Iowa. Mm-hmm. Decent defense for Wisconsin, not as good as it's been in the past. So, this is one of these games where, this is a Wisconsin team that actually has a decent offense this year. They're scoring where they do because of pace of play. It's not as if though they're not efficient with what they do. Again, we've mentioned this before. a lot of their success of late has been with the Ohio State transfer Micah Potter. He's averaged double digits his last 5 games. He's giving them about 15 to 20 minutes off the bench, which is what they needed. They needed that one other go-to guy. But I just feel Iowa has so many elite shooters. They're playing so well on offense. Their assist ratio to field goals made is incredible, where I think they can control the pace, and I think they can get to 70, which means 75 maybe even against Wisconsin. So do I think Wisconsin can get to that mid-60s range? And I'm not so sure. So, that has me leaning with Iowa here. Clearly, it's a few too many for me to get to the window with, but making an opinion would have to be with the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, how many times do we come on the day after our Iowa games and we're saying, wow, well, that's, there's Garza again leading the pack, and all of a sudden it's a double-digit win for Iowa, and especially at home, it's just it's tough to go against them. It really, really is, and especially with the way they're playing now. And watching Wisconsin, do I trust them? Again, another one of these situations. Do I trust them enough to put enough points in the board to be able to cover it against an Iowa team that can demoralize you rather quickly here with the shooters they have? It's two very tough games here tonight for sure. So it's a tough card. I would definitely lean Iowa. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it ain't broke in Iowa right now, especially at home. So I wouldn't dare pick against them, Ralph. I think you'd be crazy in order to do it.
Yeah, last year's games were. Wisconsin swept the series last year. So when Iowa was at home, they were a 2-point dog. They lost 72-66. And then in March, they went to Wisconsin and lost by 20, 65-45. So, they clearly remember that last game. So, you're looking at, I think it's important to look at a year adjustment from one year to the next to try to think of, how are these teams done? And, there's a 7.5 point difference because Wisconsin was +2 last year. Now they're minus 5.5. So do I see a 7? Do I see a 7 difference gap from the last time they played? Yeah, Wisconsin's down a few notches. Iowa's probably up 15, 20 notches. So to me, that's a reasonable number from what the difference was the last time they faced off.
There you go. All right, Ralph, you going to go with me? You're going to back Prairie View here tonight, late at 21 against Mississippi Valley State, or what? What are you doing?
Is that what you're doing?
You're damn right I'm doing it. The Prairie View at home. We all know Mississippi Valley State. I might as well take the over, too, at 153. They're going to score 160 points in this game by themselves.
Yeah, well, Prairie View got now 6-1 their last 7.
Exactly.
And Mississippi Valley State does have a win against Alabama A&M. They're number 335. So there's not many teams worse than Mississippi Valley State in looking at Ken Palm's ratings. I'm going to start from the bottom, Joe.
Go ahead.
Chicago State, Maryland Eastern Shore, Central Connecticut, stop. Mississippi Valley State.
There it is. Boom.
That's pretty good. They're ranked 4.
Well, that's depending on how you look at it, right? Everything is about perspective, man. Everything is about perspective.
This college basketball season was upside down, so Mississippi State is rated number 4.
Yep.
I didn't play any college games today. I passed, and again, even with all access customers, if there's not value, there's no reason to force it.
Yep.
The closest game to me was Sacramento State plus the couple of points against Northern Arizona. I look at them, both teams are 4-2 the last 6 games, but Sacramento State's played some good defense. And they're a slower paced team. They played solid defense. And I don't mind backing a team that's hot like that when you're going on the road if it's the better defensive team. So Sacramento State's really a home-road dichotomy team. They're at home now. They started 8-0 at home for the first time in their careers. I was just reading this morning when I went and read their guide. So Brian Katz has them playing well. but they have yet to get that road win. And if you look at their road losses, I mean, Montana, Northern Colorado, and Southern Utah, you're looking at 3 of the. So you could say, well, they've gotten blown out in their road games this year.
Right.
Yeah, but you also have to look at who they've played. They've played the 3rd toughest conference schedule. Northern Arizona, by the way, has played the toughest. So both teams playing a little better than they show because they've played the upper class of the Big Sky so far this season.
Love that. All right, guys. And make sure, of course, WagerTalk.com all week long. Get to Ralph's page there, the Cal Sports page. Make sure you like these videos. And, of course, make sure to come back and join us tomorrow. We'll get you ready for a full card of action, plus recap what we see tonight. So, short card, good card here to kind of kick back, enjoy, and just relax and watch. But we'll break it all down for you tomorrow. Get ready for another monster day on the in the college hoops world tomorrow. So, Ralph, as always, man, appreciate the time. Good luck with the plays, and we'll get to do this all over again tomorrow.
Hey, Joe, I do have one question.
Sure.
I did not get the invitation.
Two?
Did you rent out the Fountain Blue for your Super Bowl, the Joe Raineri Super Bowl bash, or was that?
I can't believe it because, it was funny. I thought I sent it to Marco. Marco said he sent it to the Prez. You didn't get it? Like, I don't understand what happened there. I really don't, man, but no problem. Yeah, hop on the plane. Let's go. Me Casa, Su Casa. No problem, man.
You, Jay-Z, and, and
the Beyonce, and again, you're damn straight.
We got to mention Kobe Bryant, one of the greatest players ever.
Absolutely.
That's horrible what's happened. They're doing the absolute right thing, putting him in the Hall of Fame this year, not having to wait.
Yep.
That's a show of class. But it really, think about it. We haven't had any athletes. I mean, I don't know, maybe going back to Roberto Clemente, someone who was in their prime or just left their prime.
Yep.
Passed away in a long time. Maybe Payne Stewart in golf if you're a golf fan. But, yeah, certainly a sad day in the NBA.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible for all the families involved. So it's going to take a long while to get over that one. But one day at a time, Ralph. And Kobe wouldn't have wanted it any other way, man. Just get back and compete and get on the hardwood, which is all we can all do at this point. So appreciate the time, Ralph. We'll do this again tomorrow, my man.
Talk to you in 23.